Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining me today. I'm Chase Abbott. I'm from Connect Automotive. And today, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the latest trends in consumer behaviors and how you can use technology to create the experience your shoppers want. And just a few housekeeping items before we get rolling here. All attendees have been put in muted only mode, but if you do have questions throughout the session, please use the go-to console on the right-hand side of your screen. And after the presentation, we'll leave some time for Q&A. And we'll also be sending a recording of this presentation and a copy of the slides after the webinar as well. So thanks again for joining me today. Like I said, I'm Chase. I'm the Vice President of Sales for VIN Solutions and Dealer.com for Connect Automotive. Just a quick background, quick story on my background. I started in the car business in 2003. Sold 20 cars my very first month, and they said, "Hey, big guy, you can type. Why don't you be our internet manager?" And I think in 2003, that's really the only prerequisite was you had to be able to type. So worked my way through the chairs, new car, used car, GSM, really learned the business. And I'm here today to speak with you about something I'm just really passionate about, and that is today's car buyer journey is just so much different than it was even when I started in the business less than 20 years ago. And in my pre-COVID travels, I would visit dealers and I would see wildly different levels of technology adoption and progressiveness. So today, I'm going to bring you some interesting statistics, some data, and some insights that we're seeing across our solution sets at Connect Automotive. And if I do this right, hopefully you'll come away with a fresh set of eyes on how you need to approach your customer base, armed with the latest data that your customer base is providing you every single day via their online footprint. So with that, we'll get rolling. One second here, my slides are not advancing. There we go. So in the past few months, we've seen our lives change drastically. But even if the retail experience has changed, that doesn't change the fact that people are still, people still want to buy cars, and they're open now more than ever to doing it online. So there are tools and resources out there today that can really help you meet consumers where they are, even if they're on their couch at home. And recently at Cox, we conducted a follow-up survey to record the impact of COVID, and saw an increase of customers willing to construct an entirety online go from 20% up to 61%. And as the slide notates, we've seen a huge increase in the amount of digital retailing leads, up 267%. So think about this, all this additional online activity that we're picking up and these rich digital retailing lead submissions that we're getting now means that your customers are giving you more data than ever before. And as we think about what dealership marketing looks like moving forward, I think it really has to be centered on personalization. I mean, now is the time to use that data in a personalized marketing strategy that helps create the shopping experience that your customers want. And as you can see, with a 17% decrease in foot traffic, the days of waiting on the old proverbial up bus, I think, are kind of behind us. So real quick, just take a quick look at the high level agenda today. And first, we'll look at just some trends in consumer behavior and the car buying journey, what's going on there. Second, we'll look at how you can use technology to kind of create those experiences and help you leverage that data. And lastly, we'll look at just some key action items for your digital marketing strategy and kind of what success looks like. So let's just start by reviewing some of the key shifts we've seen and how consumers are shopping today and ultimately buying cars. So first, I think we've got to start by setting a baseline, face the truth a bit here. I mean, customers still really don't like the car buying experience. I mean, only 1/3 of dealership customers are still very satisfied with their experience with today's dealership, and meaning that 2/3 of them are looking for another option, right? And so those aren't good metrics to sustain a loyal customer base. And you all know how much more expensive it is to bring in a new customer than it is to retain an existing one, right? But most dealerships, in my opinion, aren't making enough of a personal investment in that customer experience that will drive that loyalty and drive that ROI. And you also, I think we should take the time to realize that, look, providing a great customer experience today is getting very complicated. I mean, even the best traditional buying experience just isn't going to cut it anymore. And I think dealerships get that, with nearly 9 in 10 of them saying they have to find alternative ways to sell if they're going to survive. And, you know, we've been talking about digital retailing in this industry for quite some time, but the events of this spring have really fast-tracked its importance. And I also think, you know, you need to understand that when we talk about today's consumer, experience really is king. And these numbers on the slide kind of back that up. And what that means for dealerships, and also what that means for vendors alike, is we really have to obsess over the customer experience and provide a seamless, easy, reliable process. And the more your process is based on actual consumer input, the more relevant you can become. I mean, I remember in 2004 writing thank you notes to my customers, and because it was personalized and it was caring, you know, and I took the time to do it. And it went a long way with my customers. And today's technologies are facilitating those same, you know, handwritten note feelings, but now on a much grander scale. So some of you might be saying, yeah, I hear you, Chase, but it's on the salespeople to deliver the experience if I'm a manager or a new principal. But if you think about these examples on the screen in front of you, marketing, especially digital marketing, is just a huge part of it, because marketing sets the expectations. And that plays a big role in providing a solid experience. I mean, it isn't simply enough to just have the capability to work deals online these days. Consumers are used to great experiences provided by some of the retailers you see here, and they've only come to expect more of their online shopping experiences after the pandemic kept most of us at home. So if you take a look across the bottom of the 3 key positioning strategies here, what you'll see is saving time, an upfront and clear buying process, as well as just having a better experience with technology. They all revolve around the customer experience, and it truly is paramount for today's consumer. You know, and it really just isn't the conditions driven by the pandemic that make providing a great experience so important. I mean, younger generations have even higher expectations of a personalized experience from dealers, meaning that as time goes on, a larger portion of your customer base with a larger amount of buying power is just gonna expect something different. And the dealerships, I think, that get ahead of that on providing that a great experience now, when this generation is perhaps making their first vehicle purchase on their own, and maybe the ones that are really the ones that are gonna win here for the dealer side, because I think those young customers will remember and they'll return if you have a cutting edge process. And, you know, given the retail experiences consumers have come to enjoy and expect really from other industries, it's not surprising that they see value in dealerships implementing a personalized technology like AI. Just to note that I'll still run into this perception that customers don't want an experience aided by technology, and really only people can do that. But in reality, if you look at the numbers, many consumers, 2 in 3, think the vehicle buying and owning experience could be improved using personalization technologies such as AI. So, you know, when you boil all this down and you look at the numbers, you know, they're 100% bearing fruit as we speak. I mean, we're seeing digital retailing leads right now coming in at a 30% higher close rate than normal leads. And, you know, also as vendors, right, I think we have a responsibility and need to offer dealers the flexibility on how DR gets done at their store. I mean, flexibility around how financial products are displayed, for instance. And I think, you know, that's a good one, because F&I, as a former F&I director, is one of the final frontiers of profit, you know, for dealers. And I think they're more hesitant about that, to list those products out front or that pricing out front in a DR experience. But we are seeing, with increased time and lack of feeling pressured or rushed, right, on a busy Saturday when I had 10 people waiting, those consumers are actually educating themselves at their own pace about, you know, the value behind these products and what GAP really does for me and what a service contract really does for me. And in turn, we're seeing, you know, 30% higher gross profits on DR deals as a result, because we're allowing the consumers to go at their own pace and learn at their own pace. So easier said than done, right? I mean, we all know customers want a personalized, connected car buying experience, right? But the problem is who has the time to manually go through all that data and create an individualized experience with every customer, right? It's impossible to do. But with the right technologies now, we're able to turn up the volume on great experiences and ultimately retain more of that base. So before we start talking about how you can use the technology, I just want you to think for a moment about how your consumers are using it. So what you'll see here is the technology adoption curve here. And it's happening now faster than ever. Even in the last 3 years, we've witnessed a significant shift. Only 2% of consumers today consider themselves to be a laggard, meaning they're skeptical about new technology. A significant decline from 2016. And as a result, we've seen increases across the entire spectrum of adopters. And if my mom can work her iPhone fluently, which she can now, which boggles my mind, it only speaks to this slide, that the laggards aren't as much of a laggard as they used to be, and folks are really expecting technology now out front. And it's clear, I think now we all know, and even going into before this webinar, we all know that customers are open to technology. But for them to adopt technology like digital retailing, which is a new experience for most people, it has to deliver benefits to them. And try to think about ways through your marketing strategy to deliver on these 3 benefits. More info readily available. Do you have an at-home process clearly defined on your website, on your VDPs? Is it laid out in detail to put customers at ease about buying a car from you? I mean, can I start online and finish in store, or do I have to start over when I show up at the dealership? Those things need to be upfront and clear throughout all your marketing channels. And let us not forget that a good digital retailing experience doesn't necessarily mean one that's 100% online. I mean, some of your customers are going to want to do everything online, probably a small percentage. But many more are going to be looking for more of a hybrid approach, right? And that incorporates some elements of a traditional experience and some elements of an online buying experience. And which of those elements fall will depend on where the customer's at in that. So as you think about digital retailing and what it means for your dealership and your customers, I challenge you to think about it as a tool that enables flexibility and transparency rather than a tool that prescribes a fully digital buying journey. So now that we've set the stage on, kind of where customers are, how they're looking at this data, the increases there, let's talk about some of the tools and the insights that can help get you there, particularly artificial intelligence. These technologies are really changing life as we know it and impacting the way consumers shop and what they expect across all their experiences, and like the data, the workload, the customer insight potential with AI is large and already enabling businesses to help control their expenses, improve CSI, increase their relevancy, increase their retention, and things like that. So you might be asking, okay, isn't tracking all this online shopping behavior maybe a little weird, maybe a little creepy? But the data is telling us that consumers are now expecting that personalization. And some of those consumers don't have a problem with curated playlists on Spotify based off their listening habits. I sure don't. I love that. Or Amazon's recommendation engine, like Chase's Amazon, if you will. I mean, needless to say, there are a lot of proof out there that despite what some consumers may say about AI being creepy or, that kind of thing, a personalized experience is really what they want. And when you see numbers like this, like 40 million listeners use AI daily on Spotify, 40 million. 35% of Amazon's revenue comes from the recommendation engine, or Chase's Amazon, if you will. Very hard not to embrace that when you see numbers coming across on the revenue side like it is. And I think we can also agree that we need to look outside of our own, our normal area, I guess you'd say, of comfort to help us kind of adapt and thrive in this. And dealers know, I think, that the old way isn't going to be sustainable long term, and a major paradigm shift is in process really right now, and driving the need for new business philosophies and technologies to help enable them. And with 79% of companies planning to use AI by next year, I think the seats are filling up pretty fast to go to the next level. So there's a lot of emerging tech around AI. It's a pretty big buzzword. It's like big data in automotive a few years ago, and a lot of different flavors really of how it's being done. I mean, some are positioning AI around, bot follow-up and engagement, where a chat bot is really kind of handling customer interactions, while at the same time, which helps reduce the task load on personnel in the store. Others are offering curated insights based on shopping and behavioral data. So, that you can offer kind of relevance in an instant by consuming a customer's online shopping footprint and preferences just very quickly and very easily. And you might be saying, this all sounds great, and maybe I can reduce my labor costs, or maybe we do weed through some of it, but how can it really help me on a car deal? And next, we'll look at a few real world examples, where AI can make a positive impact, deal to deal. So when your customers, we'll start with this one, buying signal insights. So when your customers visit your website, and third parties like Auto Trader or Kelley Blue Book, for instance, they're leaving behind all kinds of clues about what they're looking for. But the sheer volume of data available to you today, it's just impossible to parse through all of it manually and get to anything useful. Artificial intelligence, however, can do it almost instantly, and it can use customer data to generate buying signals that forecast or estimate where customers are in the buying process, and things like what make and model are they most likely to buy. So if they send in a lead on a Maxima, but through the AI data, they're extremely likely to buy an Accord, you might follow up differently and maybe send a couple used Honda Accords if you're a Nissan store that you have on your lot, in addition to the requested info on the Maxima, so that you can increase your relevancy and conversion potential of your message. And they say, I didn't even know they had Hondas over there. That's a Nissan store. Oh, well, that may work. It's a pre-owned, 1-year-old, low miles. And it will give me insights into what that customer's looking at and where, am I on the wrong car? I used to ask myself that every day in internet, and this will help sort through that. Another great one, second vehicle of interest. I mean, rather than starting from square one when a customer realizes they can't afford the first vehicle they contact you about, I mean, that ever happened? Wouldn't it be great to just pull up the runner-up, have a tag in it, ready to go, and have it hit home with that customer? And today's tools can tell you what your customer has been looking at beyond their primary vehicle of interest to help you market to them, or making switch vehicle processes much more effective. And this is one of the biggest areas that we've seen out of AI, and one of the biggest opportunities. Dealerships get leads marked lost or bad for numerous reasons. Some of them are good, some of them are actually bad, but that doesn't mean the person's not going to ever buy a car. The customer website, or customer back on website alert, will tell you just that. This is a really powerful tool that helps in prioritizing and finding opportunities that might have otherwise been overlooked. And so take it a step further on a scenario, a customer purchased a vehicle, and they tell you they're going to keep that vehicle for around 3 years. But if they get back on the site and are shopping trade-in values in 2 years, before they submit the next lead, we can let you know that. And would you follow up differently in this pre-conversion market, if you will? Meaning, once that customer hits submit, they know the game is on, and they're about to get contacted by a bunch of dealers potentially. But if we could get to that customer before the submit of the lead, and actually make that coincidence, if you will, powered by technology, maybe we could offer them up a trade value that hits home, and we sell those folks a car. Cater the message to their shopping behaviors. I sure would take a hard look at that. Customer back on website's a very powerful tool that we're seeing come out of the AI stuff. Another AI tool we'll talk about today is sentiment analysis. And, give you a story. When I was in dealership, we had a really hard time with the quality control of our messages, just due to the amount of messages that were coming in and out every day. And we wanted to have eyes on our reps and how they were following up, what they were saying, how they responded to customers. The problem was thousands of communications, and there just wasn't a way for our team to look at every one. And normally, a salesperson, right, is going to come to the desk and say, hey, they're just not going to buy. Instead of, hey, look at this email and look how upset this customer is with me. That never happens. Normally, a salesperson is just going to bury that communication and fade any possible heat that may come with it. And AI tools today are now scanning. AI sentiment is measuring and scanning every inbound email, every inbound text, and they're looking for negative and positive sentiment. And in lifting up those call to actions or those opportunities to management so that we can know, hey, this customer is about to defect on us permanently. We need to get a manager involved here. And we can look for that positive or negative sentiment, and otherwise never would have been found, right? And so AI scanning all those messages, there's gold in some of those messages, and there's coal in some of those messages, and we need to make sure that we take on every one of them. And then one other area we're seeing is engagement strength. We ever have an optimistic salesperson tell you that they're forecasting they'll sell 4 cars on a Saturday, and then in reality, they only deliver 1 or 2. Engagement strength can help you know what the actual events have happened or taken place with that customer and verify if the proper steps have been done that are really needed to do a car deal. And it makes it easy for sales managers to review engagement strength quickly and efficiently so they can forecast sales more accurately. And boil it all down. Now, these are some of the statistics I pulled from the VinSolutions AI tool. And what we're seeing when you boil down the results, if you look on the left-hand side of the screen there with me, you'll see customers in our ready to buy filter, we're at 10.8 times more likely to buy in the predictive index, 4.6 times more likely to buy for actively shopping classification, and 3.3 times more likely to buy on casually browsing versus a regular lead. Now, if you look at the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see on the ready to buy filter, make is the blue and model is the gray. We're predicting accuracy of 84%. These are real world numbers. 84% accuracy when it comes to picking the make for our customers in the ready to buy filter. And we're at 46% accuracy for the model. So we can get really prescriptive on what this customer is going to go do, how do we need to interact with them, what kind of car do we need to have based off of all this data. And I wanted to say, show you this. This is just an example. Where's your low-hanging fruit? It's the end of the month. You need to hit a volume bonus. And here's an example of where you can go and segment and approach your customers, even if they haven't told you they're back in the market, right? And pay special attention to the bottom. If you look in the bottom middle, the very bottom, you'll see 128 ready to buy. And those are 128 people. Now, this is a real dealer's database. Now, I've obviously whacked out the name of the dealer, but 128 ready to buy that have no active leads. 128 folks that have no active leads that are in the ready to buy filter. So when somebody comes to me and says, how are you going to hit your numbers this month? I tell you the first place I'm going, I'd call that 128 and get busy. Because that's very interesting stuff. If I know they're in the market, ready to go, and I'm not even calling them. Big stuff, big movers when it comes to where you're going to finish the month at as a dealership. So all of these AI tools will help you understand, your customers a little bit better. They'll help you personalize their experiences a little bit better, but there's more to driving a digital transformation at your dealership. And it's, we want to go through just a few of the things that you're going to have to look at when it comes to driving that digital transformation, help pinpoint where your customers are in their journey so that you can reach them with meaningful messages, at the right time. As expected, right? So this is an engagement chart with DR starting from about when the pandemic got real all the way up through May. And as expected, we've skyrocketed in engagement, and with shelter in place orders and social distancing, obviously digital retailing has become paramount. We just got to realize there are different levels of adoption on digital retailing, meaning traditional, like I talked about earlier, with the hybrid to a full digital journey. So we want to take you through some of what we're seeing on the DR side now. So now, if consumers are online shopping, right? We talked about that. They're more than ever. They're engaged more than ever. What exactly does that mean, right? So we're seeing 6.5 more pages visited per session when a DR experience is present. Right? 6.5 more times. So it's a more engaging experience. And we're seeing 5.4 times more likely to actually submit the lead when DR is present. Why is that? I tell you why it is. It's because you're being transparent about your prices, your vehicles, and what all that means, which breaks down the old tired stereotype of what it means to buy a car in this country, right? So I think it's that transparency that we really have to focus on. And when customers can learn and build value on their own terms, on what works for them on their own time, it's really seeing great results versus waiting 3 or 4 hours on a busy Saturday, and becoming frustrated because of that. One of the most powerful pieces of DR is knowing exactly where they left off. You know, you got another vehicle, the payments, the financing, penny perfect, right? And since your customers submitted this info themselves online in the DR experience, right, they're going to expect you to know what it is when you come in store, and they're going to expect you to acknowledge it and resume those communications right where they left off. So it's important to make sure your team understands that and is fully trained and ready to rock on that process, so the customer experience doesn't have a disconnect, right? Where one person thinks this should be one thing, but the staff in the store thinks it should be something else. You know, with digital retailing, I can't stress the importance of NUC. Whichever DR, digital, when I say DR, digital retailing tool you select, make sure, please, it has some level of integration with your desking tool. I still talk to dealers today, every day almost, that are rebuilding the entire deal structure online inside of the desking tool due to a lack of integration. So if I learned anything in my time in the car business, it was that time kills deals. And I think really that sentiment is still with us today. I mean, with desking integration, the data transfer of customer info, vehicle info, payment, deal structure is all automated. So you can, you know, save time and pick up where the customer left off, not have to do any pieces of the process again. And when you think about that, it really puts them in the driver's seat to take control of their own deal, help break the tension and of that old stereotype of what it means to buy a car. So another interesting trend we're seeing, and I had to let you guys in on, and maybe this works for you, maybe it doesn't, but we've seen folks get so good with their DR process that they're using it for the in-store process. When these tools become better and better integrated and better utilized, you know, other dealership sales and marketing tools, you'll find that the entire process can really be streamlined and pretty darn efficient. So something you may want to think about, but what Cox Auto research has shown is that a lot more consumers are open to doing it, and with and considering it, with 73% of consumers citing an increase to finalize their deal online. So if you know, if your in-store traditional process is not great and you've got a bang up DR process, maybe you want to talk about some integration points between those two as well. So your marketing strategies, right? They play a huge role in creating the kind of experience that wins and retains customers, especially with more emphasis on digital than we've ever seen. And now we'll just hit on a few things you need to make sure you're doing to make the most of the opportunities of the moment. So in the last few years, especially, we've all become more comfortable, right, with getting these goods and services, rides to the airport, food deliveries, big on my list now. I can't live without it. I wouldn't eat, or the meals would be terrible. But I wouldn't want to give up those things. And with 74% of consumers today telling us that a personalized experience is what they prefer, it's important now more than ever that dealerships double down on their digital strategy and take the time to understand what makes them unique. And so they can offer a better experience. If I can go get a Ford down the street for the same-ish price, what makes you different than that competitor? Huge amounts. And if you don't have that question answered for your dealership, it's something you might want to make sure that you're doing so you can have a key differentiator when people talk about your store versus, you know, the next Chevy store down the street, if you will. As I showed earlier in the consumer engagement slide, interest in DR, right, spiking all-time high. And adoption's only going to rise, right? Because of that, a ton of dealerships are buying digital retailing right now, and I mean a ton. But I fear some dealers are really going to struggle or have struggled throughout this year as things go on and go along with digital retailing. I mean, you can't just put a widget or a DR experience on your website and just expect everything to go swimmingly and flourish. And with 7 out of 10 consumers saying that they're more likely to buy a car if they can start the process online, I think the demand really is overwhelmingly there. So, you know, what's shifting to a culture of digital retailing? You know, what do I need to think about? Like, okay, we're going to buy DR, we're going to do it. Now what? So you'll need to agree on some key things, right? On a few key pillars of strategy. And first and foremost for me is pricing strategy. Are you going to go one price? Are you going to go make an offer? Are you going to go MSRP and just manufacturer rebates? Your merchandising strategy. Are we producing videos daily? Do we have HD photos on the car? Also, your process strategy for in-store versus at home versus completely digital. You know, producing go-to-market strategies around those topics, at least to get you started. will help ensure consistency and great experiences for both dealers and customers alike, because they have to complement one another. Now, along with the changes that you're going to need to make around your marketing strategy, you'll also need to spend just as much time, I think, on the people side of things. And when I say people, I'm talking about your own staff. And as someone that has managed salespeople for 20 years or so now, I can say that herding cats is tough work. And you'll need to think of, what this means to you and your own staff to ensure adoption from the folks who create the experiences in a lot of ways. So the biggest tip I can give you there is just, on the culture side of the equation, is just to empower them, right? And make them feel like they're part of that process. Seek their feedback. Ask them how things are going on that DR deal versus a traditional one, and make adjustments based on that feedback. Let them see it come out in the wash that they had an effect on that. And I think they'll be much more of a part of the solution versus the problem. You also want to make sure, right, that when you're looking at your marketing strategy, that it takes time to thoughtfully and thoroughly explain your process, with messages being centered around reducing friction. We know what customers think going in. Let's take that away from them right when they get on our website and increase that customer experience. Also, let's make sure you're not playing Where's Waldo with your processes on your website. Like I saw one the other day, it was like three clicks deep for their at-home process, and you just want to make sure that that's up front and center. In addition, we're seeing also great attribution from like live video companies, like LivePerson, for instance, is one. Teaming with automotive companies to help with like co-browsing if they want to get on and look at vehicles together or talk about the deal together, and giving that video conferencing a way to happen inside of the software versus on FaceTime or something like that. Another great driver of digital retailing, of a great digital retailing experience, is having up-to-date and accurate OEM incentives. I can't stress this enough. I mean, you want to ensure that your customers have visibility of all the rebates that they're eligible for, not just the mainstream ones. So, if they're a first responder, if they're military, and there's an extra 500, does your DR experience reflect that? And is it easy? And right along with the rebates, you're going to want to make sure that you have service offers listed and align with your overall strategy. Whether I'm visiting your site for sales or service, you'll want to try to drive a similar workflow and not have it feel like Frankenstein with a bunch of bolt-ons. Another tip I got to tell you on this: you'll want to pay special attention to third-party websites where your inventory is listed, like AutoTrader, Cars.com, any of those. Make sure your experience is also reflected there, because they may not hit your website and they may have a reflection of your dealership just from that third-party listing site. So to have uniformity across all those platforms is really the key in what you want to try to drive to. Due to increases, right, and we'll talk about some ad channels here for a second. Due to increases in available ad inventory, Facebook has come a really highly cost-effective way to connect with customers and let them know of your services during COVID. And dealers should really evaluate their existing marketing mix and determine if there's room to possibly move some money or services into the social space. And the other thing I got to talk about is video. I mean, two big things right now. I mean, shoppers want to know is how much is it and how can I buy it safely? And video really kind of allows you to solve for both of those in an engaging way, get in front of shoppers on YouTube, Facebook, or directly to them with your new sales process. And then the other thing I say, keep a special attention on remarketing. I mean, think about remarketing right now. We are all very distracted. We're homeschooling kids. Then they went back. Now they're back again. It's torture. I have them all in a room there, so they can't be too loud, so you guys will hear them on this webinar. But we're all distracted. We're juggling stuff, headlines, social distancing, staying safe. And I think remarketing is one of the most simple ways and cost-effective ways that we could just get back in front of people, because they want to buy a car, but then a bomb went off and now they're not looking at it anymore. But if we can hit them back with a retargeting ad, may pick back up that steam that we had from the first visit and hopefully close that deal. Now, you can't really talk about the customer journey. We talked a little bit about it on the last slide, but even talking a little bit more about video, and I get it. It's easy to think that creating video for your dealerships to use in marketing is just costly or labor intensive. I got to have a film crew out here. I'm not doing that. Video really is an underpriced channel, and you can buy an audience's focused attention through digital channels for far less than it is possible through established channels like television. So digital video advertising campaigns we built at dealer.com are achieving 2 or 3 cents per 15-second video view. And that's getting your brand and your inventory in front of someone on a channel on YouTube that they're already using, that they frequent often. So some really powerful stuff where you may want to look at that traditional mix on where you had your ad dollars and think about, what are we doing with over the top and connected TV and things like that. So, if you make all these changes, more power to you, but you're going to have a structured plan to keep reviewing, keep adjusting those changes and ensure sustainability. There's no set plan that you just put in motion and it worked for the end of time. So you've got to have spots along the way where you remeasure. And we're in a very fluid situation these days, so it's more important now than ever. And with a supreme focus on efficiency and the openness to change, I really think you can ensure your dealership's ready for that next storm on the horizon. So a couple areas you want to focus on. Think about your dealership software. Do you have the technology you need to do your job? Is it costing me deals or enabling me deals? Given the changes that have taken place this year, think about things like AI, reputation management, video advertising. I think a lot of those things, maybe a year or two ago, were just considered nice to haves, and now I think are more essential than ever, and they're more must-haves. But talk to your vendors, have an ROI review, see if you're getting the return on your investment with those software pieces, and that's something that should never stop. And saying that as a software vendor, you always measure. Also on training, even the smartest people, right? They won't reach their top potential without training. So with many people right now, they're going to be taking on additional roles or new scopes of work that with this new processes that may be rolling out, or this digital buying aspect. So keep that in mind and make sure that you train them on those new responsibilities, and they're not just lost in the weeds, causing you great customer experiences to go sideways. And then media mix, similarly, you may want to adjust the media mix to get more bang for your buck, right? If you're doing a lot of heavy TV, you may want to look at some of the stuff I talked about with YouTube, or maybe some of the stuff I talked about with social. So, what does success look like for DR or expanded video, or I install AI? And so these are a few of the metrics you'll want to pay special attention to on the screen here. As always, VDP views key, lead submissions key, form conversions key, but also make sure you take a hard look at your social referral channels. What's that look like on there? We're seeing referral traffic from Facebook in our last run was up 39%. On the service side, and hopefully you have online scheduling, you'll want to check ROs and then the amount of lines for that RO for a digital customer versus a traditional one. And then on the front side, obviously front gross, back gross, space to sell, conversion rate, customer engagement on DR. And really what you want to do is pit a lot of it against, DR leads or digital nature leads versus traditional ones, and see how that stacks up. And I think you'll discover even more insights that are pretty highly relevant to your store once you start pitting that data kind of against one another and see where it comes out at. As I begin to wrap up here, just want to give a quick summary on a couple of the key takeaways from today's session. Remember, experience is king, and invest in a kind of customer experience that you want, and let your dealership stand out from the crowd. The nice to have, digital retailing and AI tools of old, I really think are must-haves now, and you may want to look at them that way. Gain insights on your customers and leverage on your competition by cutting the edge, offering that ease, that speed, and that extremely, relevant marketing. And, please invest in video. I would tell you, if you're not doing so already, there's 4 million in-market views per day. Those can't be wrong. That's a lot of folks looking at a lot of screens, and you could be in front of them through that channel. Lastly, I would tell you, be extremely careful with lazy marketing. I see it every day, and the biggest place I see it's on LinkedIn, and with sales reps just blasting their entire database with irrelevant or duplicate messages, and all that is doing is keeping me from doing business with you or responding to that message. Remember this, An irrelevant message sent at the wrong time with the wrong message does more harm than a relevant message does good. And I truly believe that, because when you get a bad survey, you get one when you upset a customer. Does every happy customer fill in a survey? No. Do most of the bad ones? Mm-hmm. So you know the deal, right? So irrelevant messages, a big no-no. Be careful with the lazy marketing and hope and spray and just blasting my entire database with one email that we spent 9 minutes on. We've got to take it a step further than that and get relevant with our marketing channels. As I talked about earlier, data reigns supreme here. When attempting to create a great experience online using AI and all these data points and all these footprints they've left behind, the data you have in front of you is the more you get, the more success you're likely to have. And the data before you, just on this slide, is just from some of our businesses at Cox Automotive. And I wanted you to have an idea of where some of the statistics I spoke about today actually come from. There are more options really out there now than ever before to help you in this arena, but keep in mind that the more data you have on consumers, the more touch points, the more data points, the more likely you are to be relevant, the more likely you are to sell them something. So your competitors are 100% going to be sending your customers highly targeted, highly relevant messages based on what they know about the customer. And I feel like you have to as well. So if I leave you with one thing today, I just want to leave you with a sense of urgency to meet these new customer expectations. It really is upon us as vendors and as dealers to involve the industry and advance not just our tools and our processes, but also our minds around what doing a car deal looks like today and in the future. So tools and mindsets exist and today to provide those customers a personalized, efficient, and relevant shopping experience from the very first ad they see all the way to signing the actual contract. So if we can agree, I think, on one thing, I think the car buyer journey has changed drastically, and dealers who are ready and waiting to accept those changes will ultimately win the war here. So in closing, I just wanted to say thanks, everyone, for your attention and your time today. I truly appreciate it. That's my time. But before we get into questions, I want to remind everyone, in case you join late, so that you can enter questions in the GoToWebinar console window on the right, it should be on the right-hand side of your screen, unless you've dragged it somewhere else. And a few have come in already, so I'll start there. So first one, do you have any tips for us to go after shoppers who start the process online but don't finish? Yeah, so I would tell you, no, have lines of sight to know that they started the process online but didn't finish. What I would want to know is specifically where they defected out of the process. Was it when they got to the trade-in screen? Was it when they got to the financing screen? Where did they get to? How far did they get? And then let's go create a relevant message or phone call based off of where they defected out of that process, because I almost guarantee you that that's where the rub is, or the friction, if you will, or the apprehension. So if we can address that directly and remove that fear, a lot of times we can do some more damage, or by damage, I mean actually getting the customer in and selling them something. Here's another one. How is this AI data being consumed and put into practice by the dealership? Are salespeople using it, BDC, or just managers? So I would tell you that AI is being consumed across the entire scope of dealership positions. I would say that most of the time, I think the folks that find this the most powerful are salespeople, managers included as well. But when a salesperson can go look at a customer record and completely consume the AI data within a minute or two, and know exactly where they need to go, what cars they're loyal to, how much money down, how much this, how much that, where this needs to go. I really think salespeople feel like it empowers them to really take it to the next level and make them better than the competing salesperson at the rival Ford store, if you will. So, but we're also seeing, at least at VIN, we have it broken down by rep. So when you get into that AI dashboard, kind of like I showed earlier, you can go by rep and see, hey, does Johnny have problems with sentiment and Rachel does not? It can really allow you to develop a personalized coaching plan for those reps, because you're getting that, you know, data raw from the system about what's going on, not curated from a salesperson's lips, which is sometimes a different story. All right, and let's see. We're not sure, last one I think we have so far. We're not sure whether or not implementing AI is worth it for our dealership. Do you have any data to support it is? Yes. So I think that slide I showed with the, you know, 10.8 times more likely to buy, or maybe for instance, that 120, that dealership we saw with 128 folks that were in the ready to buy filter, but they didn't have any active follow-up. I mean, none. They're going to buy a car, and my data says in the next 30 days, it's very likely that they're going to buy a car. We're not even going to reach out to them. So what we're seeing when we install these types of tools in dealerships, we're creating a market right out of the gate. And that's really cool. Like, because normally at Event Solutions, we're a CRM, we're a lead destination where leads go to get worked. But what you're seeing now is with the AI tool wrapped up with that customer base, we're now starting to create leads based off of what we know on these the footprints within these huge high traffic websites that we have, like Auto Trader, Kelley Blue Book, and Dealer.com. So, okay, I think that is all we have for questions. I don't see any more. I'll give it one more second. I think that's all we have. So with that, you know, we're getting closer to time. I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day. Hopefully you learned something, listen to me babble for the last hour or so. And there's some really cool stuff going on with AI, and whichever vendor you choose, that's up to you. But what you do need to look at is this technology cannot go unlooked at. It is extremely important. So take the time, verse yourself with what's going on with some of these new technologies in automotive, and really how it can help you deal to deal, make you a more effective player in the game. So with that, I'm Chase. Thanks so much for your time. Everybody have a fantastic day, and I'll catch up with you later. Thanks a lot.